I never imagined I'd lose everything over someone I'd only known for a few months. But Thailand has a way of making you forget logic. It replaces your instincts with warmth, smiles, and the illusion that maybe, just maybe, you've found peace at last. I came here after a long divorce back home in Canada, carrying nothing but savings, regret, and a quiet hope to start over somewhere that didn't remind me of everything I'd lost. The plan was simple: rent a place near the beach, relax, clear my head, and figure out what the rest of my life was supposed to look like. But what I found instead was the beginning of the most expensive lesson I would ever learn. It started in Chiang Mai, of all places. I wasn't looking for love, not really. I was just looking for connection. After years of cold conversations and empty apartments, the sound of laughter at a street food stall hit differently. That's where I met her noon. She was 26, full of energy, the kind of woman who could make a dull evening feel like a festival. She sold smoothies at the night market, always smiling, always joking, and when she looked at me, I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. I didn't care that her English was broken or that we came from two different worlds. All I knew was that when she laughed, I felt young again. We started seeing each other every day. She'd close her stall early just to have dinner with me. We'd walk along the river, talking about life, her dreams, my past. She wanted to open her own cafe someday, something small and cozy. I told her I could help, that I had some savings, and that maybe together we could build something beautiful. Looking back, that was the moment the trap started to close. I thought I was helping her chase a dream. She saw an opportunity, one that would end with me losing not just my heart, but every dollar I'd ever saved. By the third month, I was already talking about buying a house. It felt impulsive, but when you're in love, or what you think is love, logic becomes background noise. I'd found a small place near the mountains, peaceful, quiet, perfect for us. The only catch was that foreigners can't own land in Thailand. Noon suggested we put it in her name. Same, she said with a smile. We family now. I hesitated, but she squeezed my hand and whispered, You trust me, right? Those 4 words should have been my warning sign. Instead, they became the rope I willingly wrapped around my own neck. The first few months after buying the house felt like living in a dream. We painted the walls together, bought cheap furniture from the local market, and spent our evenings on the porch watching the sun disappear behind the hills. She'd rest her head on my shoulder, talking about the future kids, family, maybe even expanding her smoothie stall into a proper cafe. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the peace I came to Thailand for. I'd worked hard all my life, and here I was finally enjoying the fruits of it, the warm air, the laughter, the feeling of being needed again. For the first time in years, I wasn't lonely. I was alive. Noon's family lived in a nearby village, and she took me there often. Her mother always greeted me with a smile, and her uncles clapped me on the back like I was one of their own. They didn't speak much English, but their gestures said enough respect, gratitude, maybe a bit of curiosity. The first time I visited, I brought some gifts and envelopes with a little cash, just as Noon told me was polite. They were overjoyed. Thai culture, she said with that disarming grin. You do for family, family do for you. I didn't question it. It felt good to belong somewhere again, even if I was the only foreigner in the room. Over time, Noon started talking more about money. Small things at first: repairs to the house, bills, helping her mom with medical costs. Then bigger dreams, a car, a business, maybe a second piece of land closer to the city. She said she'd handle everything because, in her words, I know how people here work. I wanted to believe her. I told myself she wasn't using me, she was just ambitious, trying to build a life for us. So I wired the money piece by piece, convincing myself that every dollar spent was an investment in our future. But slowly, the atmosphere began to shift. Her laughter wasn't as bright anymore. She started coming home late, saying she had to help her cousin with the cafe project. When I'd ask questions, she'd get defensive, sometimes even angry. You no trust me? She'd snap, crossing her arms like a child. I'd apologize just to avoid another argument. That's how much I wanted things to stay perfect. I was willing to ignore the cracks forming right in front of me. Then came the neighbors' whispers. I'd go into town, and people would glance at me, then at each other, murmuring words I didn't understand. One old man, who spoke a little English, pulled me aside one day and said, "Be careful, Farang. You too kind can make you poor." I laughed it off, thinking he was just being cynical. But somewhere deep inside, something started to ache, that quiet, familiar voice that once kept me out of trouble, the one I'd been ignoring since I met Noon. Still, I couldn't bring myself to believe that she was capable of anything cruel. Love, or what I thought was love, had blinded me completely. Every time doubt crept in, she'd disarm me with a smile, a touch, or a soft apology whispered into my ear. "No problem, okay? We happy." And I'd fall for it all over again. What I didn't know was that while I was busy building a home for us, she was already planning her way out of it and taking everything I owned with her. It began with small things that didn't add up. A few days when she said she was visiting her family but didn't answer. Her phone. Receipts from jewelry shops in her purse, even though she never wore jewelry. Late night messages that she'd quickly delete when I walked into the room. The warmth in our home slowly turned into silence, an uneasy kind that hung heavy in the air, like we were both waiting for something to break. I'd sit on the porch, staring out at the mountains, wondering when I stopped being her partner and started being her ATM. One night, I finally asked her directly if something was wrong. She sighed, looked away, and said she was just tired of explaining, tired of being treated like a child. "You think I with you for money?" she said, her eyes filling with tears. "You think Thai women cannot love?" The guilt hit me like a punch. I apologized again and again, desperate to fix whatever was falling apart. She softened, hugged me, and said, "No more fight, okay? I love you." It felt real in the moment, but the next day, she disappeared for 3 days without a word. When she came back, she acted like nothing had happened. I wanted to confront her, but by then, I was terrified of losing her. I'd already sunk so much into our house, our life, and her family that walking away felt impossible. I told myself she was just young, impulsive, not malicious. I clung to the fantasy that love could change everything, that if I just kept giving, she'd eventually see how much I cared. That was my biggest mistake, believing that generosity could buy loyalty. It wasn't long before my savings started to run low. I checked my accounts one morning and realized nearly all of it was gone. The money I'd wired for the cafe project, the loan for her cousin, the renovation budget. When I asked about it, Noon got defensive again, saying it was tied up in business expenses. "You worry too much," she said, kissing me on the cheek before heading out. That was the last time I saw her. A few days later, I came home to find the house empty. No furniture, no clothes, no note. Just the echo of my own footsteps on the tile floor. I called her number over and over, but it was disconnected. Her social media was gone too. It was like she had vanished from existence. Panic set in. I drove to her family's village, desperate for answers, but when I arrived, her mother acted like she didn't know me. Her uncles wouldn't even look at me. The warmth that once welcomed me was replaced by cold indifference. That's when I knew they'd all been in on it. I went to the local police, but it was pointless. The house was legally in her name. The money transfers were voluntary. The officers were polite, but uninterested. "You give her," one of them said with a shrug. Not crime. It was a punch to the gut, realizing that in the eyes of the law, I hadn't been robbed. I'd just been stupid. For weeks, I slept on a thin mattress in the empty house that used to be ours, surrounded by walls that no longer felt like home. Every sound, a creak, a knock, the wind reminded me of her laughter, of how real it all seemed. I replayed every conversation in my head, searching for the moment when everything turned. But there wasn't one. It wasn't a sudden betrayal, it was a slow, calculated unraveling. She hadn't just stolen my money, she'd taken my sense of trust, my faith in people, and left me hollow. The days after she disappeared bled together in a blur of disbelief. I remember sitting on the floor of that empty house, surrounded by half finished paint cans, the faint smell of jasmine still clinging to the curtains she'd chosen. Every corner of the house whispered reminders of her: the spot on the porch where she used to hum songs at sunset, the chipped coffee mug she refused to throw away, the closet where her dresses used to hang like bright flags of happiness. But now it was all gone. The silence felt alive, mocking me. I had built a life around someone who was never really there to stay. I tried to hold on to denial. I told myself maybe something happened, an emergency, a misunderstanding, maybe even a family crisis. But deep down, I knew better. People don't erase you from their life by accident. They don't take everything and vanish overnight unless it's planned. The truth crept in like rot. She hadn't loved me. She had studied me. She knew exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to make me feel needed. And I let her every step of the way. In desperation, I went back to the police station several times, hoping someone would take pity on me, or maybe just pretend to care. But they all said the same thing. Noon have right. How's her name? Their indifference was colder than her betrayal. One officer even chuckled softly, telling me, Many farang same. You too trust Thai girl. It was humiliating not just being deceived, but being part of a cliche. I wasn't special. I was just another story they'd heard 100 times before. I spent the next few weeks trying to piece together what had really happened. Through a local friend, I found out Noon had sold the house, my house barely 2 weeks after she disappeared. She'd gotten a Thai man, likely her real boyfriend, to pose as her cousin during the sale. They split the money, and she was gone, probably down south, maybe Phuket or Pattaya, somewhere new, where the next lonely foreigner would be waiting, ready to repeat my mistakes. I wanted to find her, confront her, demand something: closure, explanation, maybe even revenge. But what good would it do? The system wasn't built for people like me. I had no rights, no legal claim, no way to get the money back. The title deed said her name, and that was the end of it. There were nights I sat outside, drinking cheap whiskey, staring at the road that led to the village where her family lived. I thought about driving there one last time, just to look her mother in the eyes, to ask her why. But I didn't. Maybe I was scared, or maybe I already knew the answer: there was never going to be justice, not in a situation built on trust instead of truth. My friends back home didn't understand. When I finally told them what happened, their responses were mixed. Some were angry for me, others just laughed it off. You should have known better, one said. You never put property in someone else's name. Easy advice to give when you're not standing in a country where your heart blinds your judgment. They didn't see the smiles, the kindness, the illusion of love that makes even the smartest man forget common sense. I tried to rebuild some kind of life in Thailand. I found a small apartment in town, took up teaching English to stay busy. But everywhere I went, I saw echoes of her. At the market, a woman would smile and my chest would tighten. A familiar perfume in a cafe could ruin my whole day. The city that once felt magical now felt like a graveyard of memories. I couldn't even look at the mountains without thinking of the house. I'd lost the one that used to be ours, the one that had been my symbol of a new beginning and ended up as the monument to my downfall. Months later, I returned to that property one last time. The new owners were renovating, stripping the place bare, tearing down the colors we had chosen together. I stood at the gate, pretending I was just passing by. They didn't recognize me, of course. Why would they? I was just another foreigner staring at something that didn't belong to him anymore. But as I watched them repaint the walls, something in me broke, and at the same time, something else began to heal. That house was never really mine. It was built on illusions, on desperation, on the hope that love could fix the emptiness inside me. And maybe losing it was the universe's cruel way of forcing me to face the truth. I wasn't looking for love. I was looking for escape. And in Thailand, escape often comes with a heavy price tag. For a long time, I thought I'd never recover. But pain has a strange way of clarifying what matters. I stopped blaming her and started asking myself why I ignored every red flag waving in my face. I realized it wasn't just her betrayal that destroyed me, it was my own refusal to see what was right in front of me. I wanted to believe in paradise so badly that I built it myself, brick by brick, until it collapsed under the weight of my own denial. When you lose something you've built with your own hands, not just the money, but the meaning, it takes a long time for your mind to stop trying to fix it. For months after Noon disappeared, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, half expecting to hear her humming in the kitchen, boiling water for her morning coffee, the way she always did. Sometimes I even caught myself setting out 2 cups by instinct. Then the silence would settle back in, heavy and cold, reminding me that the life I thought I had was nothing but smoke. I stopped going out much. I spent my mornings walking the streets of Chiang Mai with no real purpose, just watching people live their lives. Vendors setting up stalls, monks collecting alms, tourists laughing in cafes. The city moved on without me, as if my loss was invisible. I guess, in a way, it was. Heartbreak doesn't leave bruises you can show anyone. It's just something that eats away at you quietly until you forget what peace ever felt like. Everywhere I went, I saw reminders of her. A young couple on a scooter, a woman laughing into her phone. Even the smell of ripe mangoes at the market made my stomach twist. The smallest things could drag me back to her voice, her touch, the way she'd smile right before asking for something: money, favors, promises. I began to understand that love, when built on illusion, doesn't fade gently. It lingers like smoke after a fire, clinging to everything long after the flames are gone. I tried to talk to a few other expats about it. Some offered sympathy, but most just nodded knowingly. They'd seen it before men like me, middle-aged, divorced, carrying too much loneliness and not enough caution. Thailand is full of stories like mine. Some end quietly, others explode into chaos. "You're not the first," one guy told me over a beer, "and you won't be the last." They see what we don't, that we come here trying to fill something inside us that money can't fix. His words stung, mostly because they were true. Still, I couldn't bring myself to leave. Despite everything, I loved this country. The people, the food, the sense of peace that still lingered in certain corners of the city. I knew it wasn't Thailand that betrayed me, it was my own blindness. And yet, every time I passed a smiling face, a small part of me flinched. Trust doesn't die all at once. It erodes piece by piece, until you forget how it ever felt to believe someone's kindness was real. I started volunteering at a local animal rescue to fill the long hours. The work was quiet and grounding, feeding dogs, cleaning, fixing small shelters. The animals didn't want anything from me except presence, and for the first time in a long while, that was enough. There was something strangely healing about it, about caring for creatures that had also been abandoned or mistreated. They didn't ask for explanations. They didn't lie. They just existed, honest in their simplicity. As time went on, I began to rebuild my sense of self, piece by fragile piece. I sold what little I had left, moved into a smaller apartment closer to the old town, and started teaching English again. It didn't pay much, but it kept me busy. My students were mostly teenagers who looked at me with curiosity, asking questions about Canada, about why I'd come to Thailand, about whether I liked living here. I always said yes. And I meant it even after everything. I still did. Some evenings, I'd walk down to the river and sit on the same bench where Noon and I once shared grilled pork skewers, laughing about nothing. The water would reflect the lights of the temples, and I'd listen to the faint buzz of motorcycles passing by. That's when the memories hit the hardest, not as anger anymore, but as understanding. I realized that I had been chasing peace in all the wrong ways. I thought it came from having someone to share my life with, from building something together. But real peace, I learned, is quieter. It's what's left when everything else has been taken from you, and you're still standing. I often thought about her, where she went, what she was doing, whether she ever thought about me. Part of me hoped she'd found happiness, that maybe she used the money to build something real. But another part knew she probably moved on to the next foreigner, the next promise, the next easy mark. It hurt to admit it, but she wasn't a monster. She was a survivor, shaped by a world that rewards cleverness over conscience. Maybe in her mind, what she did wasn't even wrong, just survival in a game I didn't know I was playing. That realization didn't excuse her, but it did help me forgive her, or at least stop hating her. Holding on to that bitterness was like keeping a knife lodged in my own chest. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about deciding you've bled enough. Over time, the pain dulled into something manageable. I stopped checking her old social media, stopped asking around, stopped replaying our conversations in my head. Instead, I focused on the small things that made life meaningful. Again, morning walks through the market, coffee with locals who treated me like a person, not a paycheck, sunsets that painted the sky gold over the city's ancient walls. Slowly, I started to feel human again. One afternoon, almost a year after everything happened, I ran into a man at a cafe who'd been through something eerily similar. He was British, mid 50s, quiet but kind. We talked for hours about the patterns, the charm, the promises, the way these relationships start with innocence and end in devastation. There was something comforting in sharing that kind of pain, in realizing that I wasn't alone. He told me something that stuck with me. You don't heal by forgetting, you heal by understanding. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by my window, watching the rainfall over the city, and thought about how far I'd come and how close I came to losing myself completely. Losing money, a house, even dignity, those things hurt, but they can be rebuilt. Losing the ability to trust yourself, that's the real danger. So I started writing everything down. Every memory, every mistake, every warning sign I ignored. I didn't plan to publish it or even share it. I just wanted to see it all on paper to turn chaos into story. But as I wrote, I realized something unexpected. There was meaning in it. Maybe my story could be more than a cautionary tale. Maybe it could be a mirror for others walking the same path, chasing love in paradise without realizing what they might lose. That's when I decided to send my story to Paradise Traps, not out of bitterness, but out of hope that maybe someone else could learn from my pain. Because that's the real trap of paradise. It doesn't look like a trap at all. It looks like sunlight on water, a hand reaching for yours, a promise whispered in broken English. You think you're lucky. You think you found a second chance. And by the time you realize what's happening, it's already too late. Sometimes I still dream about that house. In the dream, I'm standing outside, holding the keys, watching Noon smile from the porch. Everything looks perfect, the sky is clear, the air smells of flowers, the walls gleam fresh and new. But then I turn the key, and the door won't open. She's inside, laughing softly, and I realize she's locked me out for good. I wake up with my heart pounding, and for a moment, I hate myself for ever believing it was real. But then the feeling passes, replaced by a quiet acceptance. Because in a way, it was real for me at least. My feelings were real, my intentions were real, and that's what matters. I'm not the same man I was when I arrived in Thailand. I'm older now, not just in years, but in understanding. I've learned that paradise isn't a place you find, it's something you create inside yourself. And sometimes the cost of learning that lesson is everything you own. There's a kind of peace that comes from losing it all. When you've hit the bottom, you stop fearing the fall. I live modestly now, a small apartment, a simple life, no illusions. I still walk by the river every evening, and sometimes I see couples holding hands, laughing, whispering to each other. Instead of bitterness, I feel something close to gratitude. Because for all the pain, for all the loss, Thailand gave me something no amount of money could buy: perspective. If I could go back, I don't think I'd change what happened. I'd still come here, I'd still meet her, I'd still fall for that smile. Because without her, I might never have faced the truth about myself, how easily I confused attention for affection, how quickly I gave away trust I hadn't earned, how desperately I wanted to believe that love could fix loneliness. It can't. Only self respect can. So if you're listening to this, maybe sitting somewhere far from home, dreaming of starting over in a place that promises sunshine and simplicity, remember this: paradise isn't free. Every smile has a story behind it. Every promise comes with a price. And sometimes the most expensive lessons are the ones that look like love. I still don't know where Noon is. Maybe she's running another stall in some other city, charming another man into believing he's found the one. Maybe she's settled down, maybe she's changed, or maybe she's just moved on, like I finally have. I don't wish her harm anymore. I just wish her truth. Because in the end, that's what we both were missing: honesty. The one currency that can't be faked. I walk a different road now. I'm not chasing dreams or escaping the past. I'm just living one quiet day at a time. Some mornings, I sit by my window, sip my coffee, and smile at how far I've come. The world hasn't gotten any safer, but I have. I've learned to see beyond the surface, to listen to the silences between words, to trust my instincts again. They say paradise can heal or destroy you, depending on what you bring into it. I came here broken, and paradise simply reflected that back at me. But maybe that's what I needed. Sometimes the illusion has to shatter before you can see what's real, and that's the truth about my story. I didn't just lose a house. I lost the man who believed love could be bought, and I found the one who knows it never can. In paradise, everything has a price. Subscribe for more stories so you will never again fall for any of these paradise traps.